Welcome to Star Watch Now, your front row seat to all the hottest gossip, drama, and breaking news from the world of entertainment. If it's trending, shocking, or star-studded, we're covering it. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss what's coming next.
Who says top stars do not have a dark past? Who decided that success must always look polished, controlled, and perfectly edited? Before the calm interviews, before the measured silence, before the image the public thinks it knows, there was another version of Wang Yibo. A version that made people uneasy. A version that did not try to be liked. A version insiders quietly remembered, but rarely spoke about. In his early years, some people did not describe him as gentle, talented, or promising. They used a colder word. They called him the Ice Demon. Not because he was cruel, not because he was reckless, but because when he stood on stage, something in him felt untouchable. His eyes carried distance. His presence drew a clear line. You could watch him for hours and still feel like you were standing just outside a locked door. This is not a story about scandal or exposure. There is no hidden wrongdoing waiting to be uncovered. What follows is far more uncomfortable than that. It is the story of how a boy learned to survive by sharpening himself, and how that sharpness later had to be buried to allow him to last. When people talk about Wang Yibo today, they speak of restraint, of quiet strength, of discipline. But those qualities did not appear out of nowhere. They were forged piece by piece in a time when he had no space to be soft. On stage, the early Wang Yibo was unmistakable. Black leather, metallic details, movements cut clean and exact. He did not chase the audience's affection. He did not explain himself. He performed as if approval was irrelevant. Every step landed with precision. Every look felt deliberate. Fans later joked that he did not simply perform to music, he commanded it. There was something intimidating about that confidence. Even walking through public spaces, he carried the same energy. Not loud, not aggressive, just distant. People who encountered him in passing often said the same thing. He felt older than his age, harder than expected, as if he had already learned lessons most people face much later. Some mistook that for arrogance, others called it attitude. But those who paid closer attention noticed something else beneath it. He never missed a beat, never wasted a movement, never relied on exaggeration to fill space. What looked like coldness was actually control. That control did not come easily. It came from training environments where mistakes were not softened by encouragement, where silence was common and praise was rare. He learned early that excellence was not about being seen, but about not failing. In such places, emotion is not expressed. It is managed. Yet the moment the stage lights faded, something shifted. Behind the scenes, the ice demon seemed to melt. He laughed too easily, took selfies without thinking, celebrated small wins with a boyish pride that felt almost out of place. He teased those around him, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes clumsily. There was a lightness there that did not match the image he projected under spotlights. This contrast confused people. How could someone so sharp on stage feel so unguarded moments later? How could the same person inspire both distance and warmth? That confusion followed him for years. Fans began to notice the gap and started digging through old footage, old interviews, forgotten clips. What began as casual curiosity slowly turned into something deeper. Each discovery added another layer. Each layer made the picture less simple. Then came the details that changed the tone entirely. At 13, Wang Yibo left home to train abroad. No familiar language, no safety net. Just schedules, expectations, and pressure that did not pause for childhood. He moved from place to place, adjusting quickly because he had no choice. There are stories of him rushing between commitments, making do with whatever space was available, solving problems quietly so they would not become inconveniences to others. These moments were never meant to be public. They were not part of any narrative strategy. They surfaced years later, pieced together by those who wanted to understand him better. Suddenly, the Ice Demon label felt misplaced. What people had interpreted as emotional distance now looked more like self-protection. What seemed like arrogance began to resemble a boundary. A young person learning, very early, that being vulnerable in the wrong place could cost you everything. As time passed, something else became clear. The version of Wang Yibo who laughed freely off stage began to fade. Not because it disappeared, but because it learned to stay quiet. His public presence grew more controlled. His words became fewer. His expressions softened, but also closed. Fans often describe the experience of revisiting his early years in the same way. They start by smiling, by laughing at the contrast. Then, without realizing when it happens, they fall silent, because they recognize something familiar. The way confidence can be mistaken for fearlessness, the way discipline can hide exhaustion, the way strength sometimes develops not from freedom, but from necessity. Today, Wang Yibo is no longer defined by sharp edges. His power lies in stillness, in precision, in the ability to hold attention without demanding it. What once looked like a need to dominate the stage has transformed into the ability to let the stage come to him. The Ice Demon did not disappear. It evolved. It learned that survival in the long run requires balance, that intensity must be tempered, that true control is not about showing how hard you are, but about knowing when to pull back. This is why his story continues to draw people in, not because it is dramatic in the obvious sense, but because it feels honest. It reflects a truth many recognize but rarely articulate. Growth is not always visible. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like restraint. Revisiting Wang Yibo's early image is not about exposing a dark past. It is about understanding the cost of becoming who he is today. The confidence, the calm, the presence that now feels effortless was built during years when nothing felt secure. And perhaps that is why the Ice Demon still fascinates people. Because once you understand where it came from, you realize it was never something to fear. It was simply a young person doing everything he could to stand his ground. If you found this story meaningful, thank you for spending your time with Star Watch Now. Stories like this remind us that behind every polished image is a journey worth understanding. If you enjoy thoughtful, human-centered stories about the real lives behind public figures, consider subscribing to the channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing stories that go beyond headlines and surface impressions. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to having you with us again on Star Watch Now.